Hi there, this is Catherine with Enfolded Heart Music. Welcome back to Lyre Foundations. Today we are beginning and finishing part 3 of our course, and this is really where everything comes together. We're going to be looking at 5 different compositions that you should be able to play with competence and with relative ease by the time you get through parts 1 and part 2. So let's have a brief word about that, and then I'm going to go through each song, spend a little bit of time, and kind of point out a few things that are important, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so first of all, I just want to sort of offer a little bit of a congratulations if you are watching this video because you have made it through parts 1 and parts 2. It's a lot of content, it's a lot of work to go through all of that, and so just want to take a moment, kind of acknowledge that, and hopefully this part 3 will be a sort of celebration for you as everything really comes together, everything you've learned, all of the new skills that you've developed, and now you get to really play the music. Now, you don't have to go through all of parts 1 and parts 2 to be able to play these, but certainly if you're starting from nothing, then you really need to at least make a good way through each of those so that you know both how to read the music and how to play it. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm not going to be playing through each song. I'll actually sort of switch over to a video that I released last week that has the full compositions played out, and it's a nice pretty wooded area near me, and anyway, so it sounds very nice and it looks very nice, so I just want to use those videos for it. But I want to go through each piece and cover anything that might be a little bit confusing, cover anything kind of not tips and tricks, but kind of tips and tricks, just a little bit of a word about each one of them, and hopefully that will give you some assistance as you're going through them and working on them. So there are 5 compositions. Let us go ahead and begin with Evening Reflections, and then we'll make our way through the rest of them as well. All right, so our first composition, Evening Reflections. Let's just take a look at the piece in general. And again, I'm just going to point out some things about that. And I think what I'm going to do is we'll do a little bit of roadmap and general comments. Then I'll switch over. We'll listen to the song, and then I'll say a few things just about actually playing it and give you a couple of thoughts on that. Okay, so let's begin by looking at general factors that you need to look at for any piece. The first is what is the key signature. So we have 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. And so that means that we are in either D major or B minor. Now I've already tuned my lyre to that. All of these pieces are either going to be in D or C. So either 2 sharps like we have here, or no sharps and no flats at all. That's just the particular way I decided to do this. It fits, both of those fit fairly well within a 16 or 19 string lyre. So that's why I picked those particular keys. Okay, so make sure all your Fs are sharp, all your Cs are sharp. Other things to notice is that we're in 3/4 time. So we'll have 3 beats in each measure. That's going to give it a particular feel. We also see that we have a tempo marking, and this is half note equals 80 beats per minute. All right, so that means that it's going to beep not at every beat, every quarter note, that is, but it's going to be at the half note for that. Okay. General structure of the piece. You'll hear this as you listen to it, but there's a little bit of an intro in the left hand. We kind of set the tone. Make sure I'm the right. Yep. And we'll kind of go back and forth between that idea as we go throughout. We have part A, which roughly goes from measures 1 through, let's see, 9, 10, 11, 12, through 12. Then we go to part B, which I would extend all the way through measure 25. We have a part C, which goes from 26 through 34. And you could still, then 35 through the end is kind of a continuation of part C. You could call it part C or part D, whichever you prefer. All right. Last thing to note before we listen to the song is roadmap stuff. So I have utilized the DS Alfine. And so this means that you're going to play through the entire piece, all, 6 lines, all 6 lines. Then you're going to return to the sign, the segno, which is at the beginning of measure 5. So you will not repeat that intro. And then you will play from measure 5 until you see the final bar line, which is at the end of measure 25. Okay? So let's take a moment and go ahead and listen to that. And certainly if you have sheet music in front of you, please have that out in front of you and follow along as you listen. So let's do that. Okay, now just a few very small notes of things to look out for or things to notice. The first thing to notice is that in the left hand, we have quarter note and half note in that order throughout really the whole piece, except for at the very end. So I've already played that. We have quarter, half, quarter, half, quarter, half, quarter, half. That sets a nice general rhythm and pace for the piece. So you want to have that consistent and be very comfortable with that. You go back and forth between those through parts A and parts B in those same positions. And then in part C, you shift up. So we started in the, sorry, I should have rotated a second ago. We started in the minor with B minor. And now in part C, we move up to the major, which is D. And instead of shifting down, we shift up. Now 4 measures to keep an eye on. Measures, let's see, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Measures 30, measures 34, 35, 36, 37, measure 38, and measure 42. Look out for those because they don't keep the same pattern. Rather than going up after you play the D position to the E, instead of going up to the E, it stays in the D. And those 4 different measures that I just named. So just make sure you're aware of that. It'll sound, the notes just don't really go well together when being paired with the right hand if you move up to that E position. Okay. The only other thing is dynamics. We start off with piano in the left hand, switch to mezzo piano, really just because we add in the right hand. Then you'll see a little bit of a swell in dynamics in measures 10 through 12. Make sure you come back down as you go to part B, and then a swell in the same position, the same spot. At the end of part B, where we have that left hand still doing its same thing, in order to avoid it being too flat, make sure that there's some dynamic change. I've marked it as a decrescendo, so just kind of gradually kind of dying off a little bit. And then as you enter part C, having an immediate build as you go up from the minor to the major. Okay. It kind of sneaks in there, but we switching to major, so it should be brighter, and it will be brighter, and it should be a little bit louder. That's why we move up to mezzo forte there. And then as we transition from the very end of part C or D, in measure 44, there's a decrescendo. So as you come back down in the kind of opposite way, you want to be getting quieter, so that when you come back to the main part, you're at a nice soft mezzo piano. Okay. I think that's it. A lot of repetition in it, as always, and you can see that there's a little bit of syncopated rhythm between the right hand and the left hand, whereas the left hand has quarter note, half note. A lot of times the right hand has half note, quarter note. So that may take a second to coordinate, but once you get it, then you're set for most of the piece. So I'll say this probably with every one of them, but if you have any questions, just let me know. And I hope you really enjoy this piece. We're going to go ahead and move to the next piece now. All right, we're going to move now to Fireflies at Dusk. This is our second piece. Again, let's go ahead and take a broad overview of the piece. Let's notice our key signature. We have no sharps and no flats, so it's going to be either an A minor or C major, or a little bit of both. I admit I have not changed my lyre because it's a little bit of a pain. So, and I'm working on another piece that's hopefully coming out soon. And anyways, so I haven't changed that, but it'll suffice for today. Make sure that, though, if you are playing this song, you have yours tuned where there are no sharps and no flats. All right, we are also in 4/4 time now, so switching from 3/4 to 4/4, we'll have 4 beats in each measure. Our metronome is going to be set to quarter note equals 115. And there's not really a complicated roadmap here, so we just go from the beginning to the end. It makes the piece a bit shorter. And again, follow along as you listen to the piece, watch the sheet music, and before I do, we're going to do a little bit different order. Before I give you sort of patterns for it, the different sections of it, see if while you're looking at the sheet music and listening, if you can identify where part A, part B, part C, etc. is. So let's take a listen. Excuse me. Let's take a listen. All right, so first let's talk about the division of the piece. So part A, I would say, goes from measures 1 through 8. Of course, we have repetition in there a lot. So maybe if you marked part A and then a little bit of a repeat, then I could understand that. But I'd go ahead and put that, all 8 of them, those measures, into one. We then have part B from measures 9 through 17. We return to part A again, going from measures, 18, basically through, 25. And then we kind of just have a little bit of a conclusion on that last line, 26 to the end. So in a certain sense, a bit of a more simple piece than the first one. but there's also some things that make it a little bit trickier than the first one as well. So the first thing to notice is in the left hand, we've got all quarter notes except for at the very, very end. And they're a third apart. So I won't quite play this because it won't sound right, but let's do the second one. So we start on, the first one is A and then C, but mine's a C sharp right now. The second one we move down, and we'll have G to B. Move back up to our first position on A before we move up one more to B and D. And so we sort of start in one spot, move down, back up again, back down, and we kind of go like this throughout the left hand there. And so that extra movement is a little bit more challenging rather than just moving from one spot to a second spot and back. But the rhythm is very simple. With the right hand, one thing to note, especially in the particular way that I played it on the recording, is that with those quarter notes, I ended up, what am I trying to say? I ended up basically trying to make them a little bit shorter. I thought it sounded better. You don't have to do that. But your finger, when you repeat that A and G, it is going to obviously go back on that same string. So just take note of that. So I kind of almost play it staccato, especially that first one. Again, I didn't mark it that way. It really is just a musicality sort of question if that's something you want to do, or if it's not. But just so you're aware of that. In regards to dynamics, we start at mezzo piano, and there's not a whole lot in this piece, but really try and shape it. I've marked some of the shaping that I would suggest. So for example, at the end of measure 4, go ahead and get a little quieter before you come back in at mezzo piano. And then at the very end of part A, when I can do this because I don't, yeah. We have a nice E that comes in right there. And so having that be a loud point is very nice. And then coming right back down. So play with that, how big you want that crescendo to be and that decrescendo. You don't have a lot of space, so just keep that in mind. But then as we move up to this E in part B, we do want that to be mezzo forte. You want to shift in dynamics as you go to part B. But go ahead and have it come down a little bit so that you can come back up. So come down, meaning get a little bit quieter in measure 10. And then in measures 11 and 12, again, we want to have a little bit of a swell there where we get bigger and then come back down. Anytime you have something that's really repetitive, for example, in measures 16 and 17, we have that left hand just going in its little pattern. And I would suggest having something shift in the dynamics, either getting louder or softer, usually softer, but it just kind of depends. We're moving from a mezzo forte to a mezzo piano section, so that's why I would suggest getting softer before entering it at measure 18. And then, of course, at the very end, it's meant to sound like it's sort of drifting off, like the Fireflies are sort of, moving to a farther away place. And so go ahead and definitely have a decrescendo there. You don't want all 4 of those whole notes in the right hand to sound exactly the same. You want them to really, really die off. And with that, the RIT is a ritardando, and so as you're going through those last 4 measures, you'll get slower and slower and slower as you get quieter. So I would suggest practicing that section as well, and just to get your timing right and the feel of those dynamics correct. In, again, whatever way sounds best for you. You're going to play it in your own unique way, and I would encourage that. But spend some time with it so that you know how to actually create that sound that you think is really quite beautiful. Okay, I think that's it for Fireflies at Dusk. And again, I hope you really enjoy it. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, we're going to look at March of Courage now. Again, let's take our overview first. We see that we're back in our 2-sharp key signature with F sharp and C sharp. And we can also see a couple of things that are different about this piece. So the roadmap is a little bit more complex than we've seen before. And we're also using chords for the first time in that left hand. So everything in the left hand is chorded. I wanted to give a piece that utilizes that skill. In one of the later pieces, there'll be broken chords, but these are all just totally stacked. You play it right at the same time. I'll say a bit more about that later, but let's do roadmap first. I'm sorry, let's back up. So we're in 4/4 time, and our metronome would be set to 115 roughly. That's not you don't have to play it exactly at that tempo, but 115 is roughly. So that's the same as Fireflies at Dusk. So first thing about roadmap is to note that we have some pickup notes. So you can see that the very first measure is a partial measure. You don't have the entire 4 beats. You just actually have one. So as you're counting off, you would count 1, 2, 3, and then you'd come on the 4 and. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 1 and 2. Okay. I said that wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2. Make sure to take a note of the fingerings as well. But again, I'll talk about that in a second. So we've got a pickup note, and then now for the real roadmap steps. So the way you'll play this is play all the way through past the first repeat sign, and you will play the first ending. This is marked by the little bracket and the number 1. You will stop at the end of measure 27. That's the end of the first ending. And you will go back not to the beginning, but you will go back to measure 18 where you see the repeat bar. And then you will play all the way through measure 23. Do not start playing where it has the number 1. Once you reach that measure, you're going to jump instead to where it shows number 2. This is the second ending, and you'll finish the piece that way. So let's take a listen to the piece and listen and watch, especially that roadmap, so that you can understand where you ought to be going to actually play the entire piece. Okay, just a few words about some particular things, especially in this piece, or particular to this piece. The first is the left-handed chords. I don't think I did this a whole lot in this particular version of the piece, but because you've got chords that are right next to each other, you may want to go ahead and mute them before you move to the next one. So something like this. Just kind of depends on the sound that you want. It probably is going to sound a little bit mushy if you don't do that at least a little bit. But that's the first thing to note. The other thing is in the right hand. This is a more complicated right hand than we've had in the other pieces. So be sure to look at and follow the fingering that is there. It will help you to be able to get to all the notes without moving your hand too much and not, sort of having to. Let's see, I can't even do it. You don't want to be picking at it. You won't be able to play it well at all. So you want to utilize all those fingers And one thing you'll notice is I always have a finger on the lyre in a phrase. That's to help stabilize and also give me a reference point for my muscle memory to know where that next string is that I need to play. Okay, and finally looking at dynamics, we start off at mezzo forte. I'll name the parts as well at this point. So part A is from measure 1 through measure 9. Okay, most of this is mezzo forte. Though there's a little bit of a swell in this section in a very similar way as we had in Fireflies at Dusk. Part B is forte, so give that a lot of oomph. This is in measure 10. And staying forte until the end of measure 13 before you begin that phrase again. Part B goes from measures 10 through measure 17. And then, in essence, we return to theme A when we hit measure 18, except that we have that first ending, which is different because we have a really fun, I think it's a very fun climb in the first ending. But everything up to that point is the same as part A. You'll start at mezzo forte, and as you climb with what I just played, you'll get louder and louder until you hit forte. I would first practice that run without dynamics. Don't worry about the dynamics. Then try and add some dynamics in. Expect that you'll probably mess up a little bit more as you add that dynamic in there, just because you're trying to play something different. The tension on your fingers and the strings is going to be different, so you'll need to get used to that. Okay, and let's see what else. Okay, and so then you'll go back to measure 18, which again is where part A repeats. And then when you finish off the song, that second ending is actually the same as the first time you played part A at the beginning. The only addition is that you will hold that whole note for longer, and you will add a ritardando at the end, and you will have 2 more little strums with that left hand. Okay, let me make sure that is all good. Yep. Okay. This is it's called March of Courage, so it's a punchier piece. It's meant to be louder and more abrasive, for lack of better words. So experiment. It's meant to help you experiment with that kind of playing on the lyre, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it very fun and beautiful in its own way as well. All right, let's go to the next piece. All right, moving to our 4th piece, Opening Blossoms. Again, let's take an overview of this. We see that we are in C major, no sharps, no flats, 4/4 time, and our metronome now is a little bit slower. It's at 100 rather than 115. And roadmap-wise, it's pretty straightforward. You just go from the beginning to the end. The new thing about this particular piece is that with our chords in that left hand, instead of having them as all one blocked chord, they are broken chords. Excuse me. And so remember that with broken chords, you want them to still last for these examples. They're half notes or whole notes. So either for the 2 beats or the 4 beats. However, you don't necessarily want to take that entire 2 beats to get to all the notes. So you don't want it to be like, because that sounds different. It's more of an arpeggio, and it would be written differently. So you do want to get through them pretty quick and let them ring before you move on to the next one. Okay, let's do roadmap stuff. I'm sorry, section stuff, and then we'll listen to the piece. So part A is from measures 1 through 8. As always, with a lot of repetition in there, but still, that's part 1, part A. Part B, you can already see visually the notes in the left hand change. It's a different style. You'll hear this. It's from measures 9 through 16. And then we return to part A when we go from measures 17, essentially through 22. And then 23 to the end is a little bit of a play on the very end of part A as it was in the beginning, but sort of having some repetition so that it helps it to sound like the end of the piece before we really finish it with three whole notes in both hands. So let's take a listen, follow along in your sheet music as you do. Okay, I don't have a whole lot to say about this particular piece. A lot of it we've already covered in other pieces. Again, I already said pretty much what I wanted to say about those broken chords. Make sure you're getting through it rather quickly, but letting it ring for the full beats. That's it's marked as. Part B, it's very easy to rush this section because it is so different. In both the right and the left hand, there's a different feel for that. So I would recommend using a metronome just to double check that. Make sure you're not rushing through it. And in regards to dynamics, essentially, yeah, I can't play that. Essentially, at the beginning, parts A, whether it's at the beginning or the end, that's mezzo forte. As you go down on the lyre, if you're playing notes that descend, going down, you'll get quieter, and that adds a little bit of shape to it. The section B, where we have something quite different, a lot of quarter notes, that's where it softens up a lot. So it'll be piano, then mezzo piano, piano, mezzo piano. So make sure that contrast is there. It helps it to be interesting. Because part B may feel a little bit slower, and so you want to have some shaping in there with the dynamics, again, to make it of interest for the listener and for yourself. And then the very end, as we descend, going, through these four notes, starting on a lower string each time, you can, the decrescendo isn't marked to start at the beginning of that, but it would be appropriate to do so. So basically throughout that whole line, go ahead and have that dynamic slowly getting softer, but certainly with those last three whole notes, you really want those to be very different. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 with a ritardando, 2, 3, 4. So as with before, go ahead and experiment with that and see how you'd like to do it to make it sound really most musical and most interesting. Okay, and let's go ahead and switch to The Lights in Springtime, which will be our final composition. Okay, taking a look at Delights in Springtime. This is one of my favorites, I have to say. Of these 5, probably is my favorite. I just really like grace notes. So anyways, it's in 3/4 time. I also like 3/4 time. So it's got a little bit extra swing to it. We're back at 115 for the beats per minute. Roadmap is a little bit more interesting, or a little bit more complex than what we've had in most of the other pieces. We begin with pickup notes. We are in C major. So pickup notes on that 3 and that third beat of the first measure. And you will play all the way through the entire piece. Once you get to the end, you'll see it says Dici al fine, so da capo. So you go back to the beginning, including those pickup notes. And then you will play until the end, which the end we can find at the end of measure 17 with that final bar line. The general flow of the piece is part A going from measures 1 through 9. And then part B from measures 10 through 17. Part C from measures 17 basically until the end, before we return back to part A and end with part B. So let's take a listen to this piece and follow along again with that sheet music. Okay, so just a few things to point out here. The first is that you'll actually notice that this piece and the first piece have similarities in regards to the relationship between the left and the right hand. So we have half notes followed by a quarter note, half quarter in the left hand. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Whereas in the right hand, many times we will have with a grace note, a quarter note plus a half note. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so they go back and forth. We have like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 is how that will go. So that coordination is going to take a minute. I would encourage you to not play with the grace notes at first, so that you can just get the basic structure of the piece, and then you can add in those grace notes. Remember, you still want your main note, for example, the very first one where we have a grace note of D into E. You want that E to time at the same where it's supposed to. So I'm not going to play a C because it's not quite right on my, it's a C sharp for me right now. But we want the left and the right hand to still start at the same time because they both have notes that are on beat 1. So I don't want it to be like, or I want it rather the grace note to come just before both the right and the left hand. So that E and C, the E in the right hand, the C in the left hand, are actually playing at the same time. Okay. Let me think of what else in this particular piece. Take note of how the left hand changes in the pattern that it is doing from parts A and B to part C. So we have a third, a third, a third, a third, a third in A and B. And then in part C, you're going to dip a bit lower and have a 1, 3, and 5. So you'll need to use your 1, probably 2, and 3 to reach those notes. There is one little place where, let me make sure this is right. Yeah, there is one little place in this piece where I go down to an F, which if you have a 16-string lyre, you probably don't have this lowest F. It's at the very end in measure 26, 27, 28, 29, in measure 30. So if that's the case, you can you could do a couple of different things, but what you could actually do is just either play an F an octave up, because that won't conflict with your right hand, or you could play a D. That's probably what I would do. I would actually probably play a D before going back down to the G and then ending on the C, which it's a C sharp. So, but look for either an F above or a D, and you should have one of those that's available to you. Okay, dynamic wise, the style of the piece offers a lot of interest in and of itself, so the dynamics don't play quite as large of a role. But you'll start with mezzo piano, and as any part that you have ascending, you can get a little bit louder, so measures 8 and 9, and then again in measures 14 and 15, get louder, and then as you come back down, softer. Part C, go ahead and bump the dynamic range up to mezzo forte. And then as you're transitioning from C back to the beginning, where you have the dun 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 dun, then you will go ahead and get softer again right there. Okay. I have one tiny thing that I forgot to say about Opening Blossoms, and I apologize for this. I have realized that in Opening Blossoms, I used a bass clef instead of a treble clef for that left hand. And I didn't realize it until probably a week ago. So I apologize for that. If you have purchased any format copy of the book and you would like a version of Opening Blossoms that has 2 treble clefs like all the other pieces do, please just send me an email and give me just a little proof that you've purchased the book itself. Just a little receipt, and then I will send that to you PDF, no problem. Again, I apologize for that. It just sort of happens when you go through the book. There's little things I've noticed, little typos and stuff that I fixed along the way. And so if you notice that in your copy and you would like a slightly different copy with, again, that treble clef, shoot me an email and I'll get that to you, no problem. Okay, let's go ahead and close this up, and then we'll finish with just some final comments. Okay, so this is actually the end of the whole thing, the end of the course, the end of part 3, and it's been a long time for me working on both the book and the videos and all that sort of stuff, and so I say this every time, but I really mean it. I hope it's really helpful for you. I hope that it just gives you a lot of content for you to work on for a long time, that it's a resource that will be of use to you and beneficial for your growth in your lyre playing for a substantial amount of time. That was really my goal and my hope. I really hope it takes you from an introductory level all the way through really an intermediate level. And I hope that these songs in particular, again, have a sort of celebratory feel to it. I am planning, I should be careful what I say on videos in case I change my plans for whatever reason, but I am planning on writing a lot more pieces that can take you from, through a beginner level into intermediate, etc., so that you can grow through the music as well. But this book is meant to give you all the skills in your fingers, in your ears, and in your learning in your mind to really open up this space so that you can play the instrument as much and in a variety of ways as you would like to. I really appreciate anyone who has watched or followed through this entire series. And if you have any feedback, I would be very open to that. And I really appreciate that. It's always good to know what's helpful, even what's not helpful, and maybe particular aspects that you thought were really offered that maybe you didn't find somewhere else, or that really complemented what somebody else's work was doing. So I suppose that's it. And I hope you enjoy your lyre. I hope it's a source of grace and beauty and wonder for you. And as always, if you have any questions, if I can be of additional help to you, feel free to reach out via email or in the comments. And I'm happy to help in whatever way I can. So thank you again so much. God bless you always. And may the peace of Christ be with you and with those that you love. Thanks again.